I want to talk about this early decision-making process when it comes to adapting or adopting these technologies and building your automation framework. When is the right time to think about using automation in your operations? And what are the most important questions to ask when building your company's automation framework?
Sure. So I think this is kind of one of the best parts of automation is that there's really no wrong time to start. I was at Regeneron before this, and they had a decent amount of automation set up, but I feel like it really took off more in the middle stage of the Regeneron development. So there's no wrong time. At Beam, we were fortunate enough to be one of the first 30 or so hires at the company, which I thought was really wild to see the investment early on. So it was really kind of like telling about the company's investment and the faith that they have in the technology. Our scientists had really ambitious plans still to this day, but especially in the beginning. And it just worked out great to have somebody there at those early conversations to say, hey, if you need to do this number of samples, we can set up this device for you. And then essentially not make it a logistics question, but how can we do the best science question? What are the best practices and how do we free up those resources? Do you need to hire 10 more set of hands to do some pipetting, or can you hire 10 more people to actually make the scientific questions and make the more intelligent calls than just kind of operating a mundane task. So it was really nice. And we were able to also get like the sample tracking and some of those software layers that we discussed, as more of a foundational element really early on into Beam, which paved the way for the kind of automation framework that we discussed before, even in the early stages, which ended up being useful not just for automation, but even benchtop processes. So a lot of what we established back then, like the AWS triggers that when an export happens, it automatically gets parsed and pushed or notified a user or goes through some kind of filtering criteria. You even use that on benchtop processes. So, I will say it's certainly easier to start off on automation than it is to convert. Because once you get into a rhythm, it actually does take a significant amount of time to revalidate, stop what you're doing, and there's a period of doing double work. But there really isn't in my opinion, a bad time to automate. And I think the second question was around like what are the questions to ask. I think one of the things that made me most excited to Beam, and I think really led to the success that we've had, is like I mentioned, the support that we received from leadership on day one. I mentioned that automation is foundational. I love the pun that it's in Beam's DNA, but it really is. And now with the right team, you can automate just about everything. We do microfluidics, 1536 well reactions, scaling up to liter scale reactions for manufacturing for I think the 50% that are on the call. But to do that, like you need to be able to align with the company's goals, or be given the opportunity to maybe convince that scientist that has never seen a robot, doing science, and maybe a little bit wary about can it do it as good as they've been doing it. So of course you have to deliver once you do get the go ahead and the buy-in. But for the most part, it's really about just getting that foundational kind of trust and established with people. There's obvious things like budget and space, but usually those are the pretty easy parts to justify, the ROI on scaling down and efficiency and time lost due to, manual interventions and errors. But yeah, I feel like getting kind of like that alignment really early on with the company's goals really just helps everything fall into place.
Yeah, thanks. TJ, do you want to speak to that too?
Certainly, I think that it's easy for people to look at their needs and then a little harder to look at where their needs are going. And so, the simple answer is when do you need to automate is earlier when able. But I think sometimes you also, as Matt hinted, have to think about the costs of it. And so I think the part is that sometimes that math gets a little lost. If you're trying to figure out when it's cost effective, when you make the scale makes economic sense, or the precision. And so one aspect that I've seen before is like it was back in the days of even before these advanced iPhones, but it was I think it was a BlackBerry or something, where you put in the reagent costs, the waste costs, the washing costs, and you figure out how expensive are these experiments to run. And sometimes just the miniaturization gives you a return on investment very quickly. But if you use radiation, expensive proteins, patented reagents, which is something that's applicable to our field, it really makes these calculations add up. And then you say, all right, this machine will pay for itself, or this automation process in 1 year or 2 years, or you can go through that process. So I think there's a lot of things that you can look at and realize that besides the fact of not having experiments not work or these type of things, which are true costs as well, you can figure out, all right, how soon do we have this return on investment? And then my friends used to say, well, the improvement in data quality is free on top. And so like, all right, well, we invest in this, we get to see the savings, but when we get more reproducible experiments with better precision, lower error bars type of thing, that's really just kind of a bonus on there. But I think in some ways, these things really are important, especially there's been data suggesting automation speeds the process through, to get a developmental candidate and something on. So there's a lot that comes into play. And I think really takes a look at the needs. First, what is it you're doing, and then figure out the automation that can help in that regard.
And maybe just one more note on that, because CJ brought up a great point about kind of like the unintended benefits. And there's of course the high speed and the reliability and the reproducibility, et cetera. But even just helps with, like, I don't know, maybe soft skill or soft benefits isn't the right phrase for it, but there's so many other benefits where, like, it just helps even burnout. Like, it keeps your talent fresh or even excited, or enables them to say, you know what, I don't feel like pipetting 3 to 4 well plates worth of stuff, so I'm going to cut it down to 2. Whereas if they have automation, they're like, you know what, let's blow that out to 10, do it in triplicate, and then have all the data automatically parsed. So, like, there's so much, like, people benefits as well, in terms of retention and enablement, and even in terms of a recruiting tool. We've had a lot of folks take a look at the system, and they're like, they get ideas of what they can run, and they're excited to do it. So, it's a very interesting technology. And, as TJ mentioned, there are a lot of unintended benefits that I find are really rewarding to kind of stumble across as you start implementing this stuff.
Yeah, there's some kind of factor there, right? There's the reason why, whether it was at Georgia Tech or other biotech companies, the tourists come by, the VCs come by and look at your robots, right? It's zooming through, and you get the stats even pulled out. How many? One place we were screening tens of thousands of compounds a week. And so, it really is something, and the walk away time is the other, right? If you set up something and then you've got time to go read, do other experiments, and then come back, those things really add up and allow you not to be multitasking, which is where, one of the experiments goes long because you've got two things that are supposed to be loaded at the same time, or other problems. So I think that there are a lot of intangibles, and they really don't get added up. But I think, you just think of this basic framework, as Matt was saying, these are unintended, but I mean, they're intended, but they're not really part of the calculation, because usually you can justify doing this if you identify the needs, look at the available technologies, and, maybe not, get the full process automated, start small, kind of build on that. And as Matt said, you can really invest early on data tracking and these type of things without being that disruptive, because you can come in without a fully automated system and use those. But there's just many opportunities to get in. And so I think that it all just kind of starts where you figure out what is the pain point that's slowing your research or not enabling it.